where that comes from. Philip donates 5. Let's make this stream wholesome. Do you mind sharing your path to Christ? God bless you and all the work you do. Also, hope you leave the soy Protestant church and make the longer commute to the true church. Well, as I said, I will probably actually be going to the true church for Easter, real Eastern Easter, not the Gregorian Western Easter that's a week early. So that's a long story. The path to Christ, that's a long story. Obviously, I grew up in a Protestant church and things like that, and was baptized and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like it was a very gradual thing. I was an atheist for maybe like 12 years or something like that. I would say from 16. Wait, no. How does that add up? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 16 to around 28. Maybe 27. Maybe before that. I think for the first couple of years I was really, what they call anti-theist, really like edgy atheist, like hated the whole thing. This was in the heyday of internet atheism back then, the whole 4 horsemen of the apocalypse kind of stuff and, that kind of stuff. So I was into that, and, I was an edgy teen who wanted to coom and have sex and stuff like that. I wasn't even like that bad. I was just like, I just wanted to, I wanted that to be available to me. You know what I mean? As for how I return, I wouldn't say return, because I would say that I'm in a much better position than I ever was before. But as for how I came back to Christ, it was kind of, there's that quote that greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world that he didn't exist, right? I will say nowadays the devil is overplaying his hand. And it's increasingly difficult. It became very difficult for me to not believe that there are evil forces. Like, I'm not the kind of person, like, I will sometimes like say things like, oh, freaking Satanism and it is everywhere and stuff like that. But there's a sense in which I started to see, I started to look at the world in terms of, maybe there actually is other forces at work. And simultaneously, I was reading more classical philosophy, not actually Christian philosophy. This is before I was reading Aquinas or anything like that, or Augustine. I was reading actually pagan philosophy. I read Hermetic stuff. I read things that might be called occult. Like, I don't like that word because occult is like kind of stupid. But like classical philosophy, like Platonist stuff, Hermetic stuff. And it was weird, as an atheist, I was reading this stuff and eating it up. And there were 2 things that I started noticing. Like, one is that how sensible and scientific I thought this worldview was, right? It's different. It's different from us, right? But how sensible it was. But at the same time, I was realizing how familiar it was to Christian theology. I was like, actually, this is pretty close to, oh, look, the Platonists... the Platonists have this kind of Trinity thing too. Like, that's a philosophical concept to them, right? Or, the Hermetics have all these ideas that are similar to the Trinity, the Logos and all this kind of stuff. And so I was more familiar with these philosophical, like that kind of served as a bridge for me to say, you know what, maybe I should reevaluate Christianity seriously. Because when I grew up, and for the many other people who grew up in Protestant churches, like high church Protestants are probably worse because they basically like worship homosexuality. But low church Protestants who at least have semblance of being Christians, right? Where Southern Baptist kind of people, right? If you grow up as a Southern Baptist, I wouldn't say they're like anti-intellectual, and I wouldn't call them dumb. But there's like no narrative, like there's no, like a religion, a long existing religion, and this is how Christianity was for its history, appealed to the stupid and appealed to the smart. It could appeal to everyone because you can understand God at different levels, right? If you are a brainlet, if you are a grug, you can understand God as a dude in the sky, right? He's in the clouds, he's like us, maybe he has a beard. Now obviously that is theologically false, but it's an appropriate way to talk about things. That's how the Bible and it talks about things, right? Whereas for Southern Baptists, the historical and theological background of all of this is just like it's ablated from their mind. It's just like lobotomized from them. So what happens to so many Southern Baptists is they get kind of brainlet. I mean, I shouldn't even say brainlet, but they get the simple stuff, and they can clearly be like, oh, this is obviously not true, right? This is like just silliness, right? The God, I don't know. You can think of your typical atheist arguments and things like that for this kind of clumsy Christianity, right? But that's because, in the past, there was always this understanding. Again, when Christianity came to Europe, it didn't like come as some kind of alien thing. It gradually filtered in, partially in relationship to the philosophy that was pre-existing at the time, where people had this idea. Well, Greeks were going through this idea that, maybe individual gods don't exist. Maybe there's just like one God behind them all, kind of similar to what some Hindu nominal polytheists believe nowadays, right? So all of that is to say is that, one of the reasons a lot of Christians leave the church is because they only get kind of the 100 IQ person view of what God, is supposed to be, which is not a full story, and it's not a sufficient story for people who are more introspective. So they have to find autism. They have to find that philosophical grounding, and a lot of Christians now are not fit to even understand it. But or they have no connection to it historically. If you're a Protestant especially, there's no such thing as intellectualized Christianity. It's just, let me open the Bible and this is what I think it's saying, So once I was put in contact with that, and once I started looking at things from that light, I suddenly realized, Christianity, I mean, it's more than possible. It's significantly probable. And I started going to church. And even when this was a couple years, this was like maybe 5 years ago, I don't know. But, I started going to church just kind of as a LARP first. As I started doing this, even before that, I had started, maybe I should go to church just to do it, just to know people or whatever. But, after a very short time, I was like, I do believe this. Like, I do believe, I do have this knowledge, that maybe I didn't have before, that enables, not just enables me, but it almost makes me believe. You know what I mean? It makes me have faith. So and it's hard to I'm giving you generalities, like I can't, for time's sake, I guess, I don't want to bore everyone here. I'm sure everyone should be excited, but it's nothing that I can spell out, just here trying to ad-lib it. But there are a bunch of specific things that happened, and just things in the world and things in my personal life as well served as a testimony as well, right? Because I saw the damage that atheism caused people. And of course, that is not sufficient to believe, right? That, it could be that atheism is true, even if it's harmful, right? But that served as a buttress to the philosophical changes, right? Where I suddenly understood, this isn't as stupid as I thought it was. In fact, it's not stupid at all. In fact, come to think of it, there are a lot of things that can't really explain, we talked about consciousness before as an example. There are some things that you are really in-your-face evidence of the materialistic worldview as being insufficient. So there has to be something. And maybe people have converged on this before. Maybe it's, maybe it's something familiar, right? That's a general, that was, my mindset that was coming to me. And then, of course, I started praying and stuff. You should really start praying before, even when you think of yourself as an atheist, right? You should start praying and hope that your prayers for faith are heard, right? The same, and go to church as well. I've always recommended people to do that. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.